Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Fantasy Football Fix Game Week 17 live stream. My name is FPL Nacho, and I'm going to try and be your host, guiding you through these hectic times right now in FPL. Of course, with all the COVID craziness going on, I think we need to just have a little catch up in the live chat to see how we can plan our future moves going forward. Because I know a lot of you guys right now are panicking amidst all of the COVID situation. So hopefully this live stream is going to help cure some of those issues in your team. So as always, guys, all the information here is taken from fantasyfootballfix.com, the leading FPL platform. So if you want to win those mini leagues and improve that overall rank, then make sure you head over to fantasyfootballfix.com. Links are in the bio. And with this crazy fixture schedule over the winter period, no better time than now to sign up to our free trial, which gives you access to all of the premium tools from now until the end of the year. Brilliant offer. Don't miss out on that one. And of course, with everything going on right now, I really think just that extra information in your FPL teams is just going to help you going forward because it's so unpredictable right now. So that's the big thing that we need to obviously cling on to over this period. So see plenty of people in the chat right now. Add-on, we are live now, not 15 minutes ago. We are live now. Darren, which player should I target to minimize COVID cancellation? That's going to be a big topic in this video that we are going to be discussing because, of course, right now, at the time of recording, there has been no postponements for Game Week 17. But it is worth noting that Man United have officially put into the Premier League about potentially postponing their game against Brentford. It has been confirmed that there has been a few potential COVID cases within the squad. So if you are currently a Man United asset owner or a Brentford owner, then you really do need to monitor that news carefully. And again, deadline tomorrow, 6 p.m. Really recommend you guys holding on those transfers until then, because realistically, we're going to need all the information we can get from now until then. So although you guys are tuning into the live stream, maybe looking to make those transfers, please hold off making those transfers. Now, again, at the time of recording right now, just another few general news about COVID. Norwich versus Villa. We do know that there is a slight risk of a COVID cases at Aston Villa. Don't know the extent of it and don't know whether it is going to postpone the game, but there are Villa cases of COVID. Brighton versus Wolves. There have been rumours of Brighton COVID cases as well. So if you are the likes of Sanchez owners or maybe even a Trossard owner here and there, that is going to be another one that we do need to consider. And of course, the one that obviously got delayed due to COVID, Spurs, Leicester versus Spurs on that Thursday night match. Spurs right now, we don't know this situation right now, whether they are able to play their fixture against Leicester. Of course, Game Week 16 was cancelled for them and their Europa League game. Another one that we really do need to monitor because, again, at the time of recording, no information right now whether or not that one is going to go ahead. So, see plenty of people in the chat right now. Sika, boom, hope you're doing well. Vivek, hope you're doing well. Just saw the news about the United game. Yes, let me know, guys, in the chat while we're filming live if there is any sort of big drops, obviously, in the news. I'm, of course, in this right now, so I can't actually keep up to date with the live news. So let me know in the chat if there's any crazy stuff going on. Cheeks saying, good evening, FPL Nacho. Game Week 17 is going to be crazy. It is going to be a ridiculous game week. And for me personally, let me know in the chat, guys, how did you get on in Game Week 16? Because, of course, that proved to be quite a difficult game week for some managers. As you can see with my overall rank there. If you tuned into last live stream, you would have seen I would have been at 55,000. I've now doubled my rank to 114,000. Not a good game week for me, but hopefully we can bounce back this game week. So, usual format, guys. I'm going to be basically just going through the majority of the important parts of FPL. And the main hot topics are going to be looking at the overall transfer stats going into Game Week 17. Just to update you guys on the market movers, any assets that are really picking up traction going into this game week. Of course, they could be outdated a little bit just because of the recent COVID news. Then we're going to be looking at a couple of hot topics as well, of course, as answering Q&As throughout the live stream. And importantly, some of the hot topics are going to be Watford forwards. I want to quickly look at Dennis versus King again. And I want to look at Conor Gallagher off the performance in Game Week 16. We knew Crystal Palace had great fixtures. And we need to deep dive a little bit more on Conor Gallagher and maybe some other assets that we can compare him to see whether he is still worthwhile holding forward. So let's quickly dive into the top transfers going into Game Week 17. You can see there, top transfers in. Not surprised by this. Dennis, 418,000 going into game week 17 with that away fixture against Burnley. I still think Dennis, brilliant asset, and of course, pretty similar price to Josh King. We are going to compare the two later on in this live stream, but no denying that Dennis has been a great asset so far this season. Bernardo, second highest transfer, and getting that assist, controversial one, but with a home fixture against Leeds, I think it's going to be goals in that one. And we know with Bernardo Silva, we're going to get game time with him, and that's the most important thing right now in this winter period. And Gallagher, third most transferred in off the back of that brace, brilliant brace. We knew the fixtures were there. We knew he was performing well, and if he can continue that hand in hand over that period, he could be an amazing asset to hold on to. And some of the top transfers out, Cancelo, the highest transfer out, 320,000 transfers out. Now, for those that didn't know, Cancelo is suspended for game week 17. And for me personally, I view that as actually a blessing in disguise. Pep Guardiola, we know, is a rotational manager, and we can never pick and choose when our assets are going to get rotated. With a situation like Cancelo, we know that he is going to be suspended for game week 17. And the way I view that is going to be his rest. And for the foreseeable future, I see no reason why he is going to sit out any game weeks after that. So I would prefer to have this situation where I know the game week he is going to be off and I could plan around it with my bench. Of course, with the COVID news, that could cause a few problems, but hey ho. Vardy, second most transferred out. Bench, obviously, in game week 16. I would say probably, if you are a Vardy owner, probably is the time to sell now. With that tricky fixture against Spurs and difficult fixtures afterwards, might be the time to move away. So, last little bit here. I just want to quickly show you guys the top 10 all transfer combinations across FPL. And you see that the number one is Jamie Vardy to Ronaldo, 6.4% of the transfer combinations. Now, guys, it is worth noting that, of course, this is slightly outdated because this was likely to happen before that Man United news. We don't know now whether that is going to continue or not, and I would recommend people not buying Man United assets as we speak because of that uncertainty going forward. But we see there the trend is Jamie Vardy. Vardy out to Watkins. Watkins with that brilliant fixture against Norwich and fixtures going forward under a really improved Villa team with Steven Gerrard. I think Watkins, we've been struggling to pick out forwards recently. The premium's not necessarily being super attractive, and the likes of Antonio really disappointing. Watkins could emerge as a great option going into the coming game weeks with DCL and Bamford still not available at the similar price brackets. So guys, I want to quickly dip into the chat here. Let's see who is in. Who we got? Colin, hey, what's good? Bought Watkins in early for Kane. Yes, great shout, Colin. Like I said, Watkins I do think is going to be a nice asset going forward for sure. Jones saying -4 for Phil Foden. Now, we know with Phil Foden that he was on the bench for Man City in game week 16. We've seen with Pep Guardiola's press conference that he is still managing an ankle injury, but Foden is basically going to tell him, that's kind of what he said, about whether he is ready to go or not. And I get the impression with Phil Foden, he is the sort of guy that is just going to say he's available week in, week out. I don't think that necessarily a -4 Phil Foden is a good move, but it depends who you are selling asset to bring in for Phil Foden, of course. Mads saying, where we go here, sorry, skipped along. Mads has said, Vardy and Tony out for Watkins and Antonio in. So I think that's a really good segue for us to quickly look at the, what are we looking at, guys? We're looking at the predicted points over the coming game weeks. And of course, right now, we currently have our projections based on players featuring in their games. Of course, with the current COVID situation, we don't know necessarily whether these games are going to happen or not, but these are based on guaranteed game time for assets. And we can see that I filtered it by the next 6 game weeks. No surprises, Mo Salah, top of the list with 46.9 points over that period. And you can see that over game week 17, 9.8 points projected with that brilliant fixture against Newcastle. I really think that he is still the go-to captain option in each and every game week. And our projected points there just kind of back that, really. I don't think you need to necessarily go against Mo Salah. And of course, Cristiano Ronaldo, second projected most points over the next 6 game weeks. But again, it is worth noting that with that Man United news, I wouldn't recommend managers piling into Cristiano Ronaldo. I think if you have him, you just hold for now, wait for news that comes out. And then, of course, if we do get confirmation of games getting cancelled, then it might be a time to move away because, of course, the congested fixtures, if you miss 1 game week, you're probably missing 2. And that is a big part of the FPL season that you are missing out holding an asset like Cristiano Ronaldo. But you mentioned about Antonio. Now, he has been a really disappointing asset, basically since game week 4 or 5. Picked up that really, really lucky assist against Chelsea in game week 15. Didn't deliver in game week 16 once again. West Ham really struggling against Burnley to break down that that block, sorry. But you see there, 32.5 projected points over the next 6 game weeks. It's been a real slog for Antonio owners. But right now, with the likes of Watkins not necessarily projected to score more points than Antonio, I still think Antonio can be a hold. But I appreciate that managers right now are probably fed up of seeing him in their sides and probably could just roll with Bowen in their midfield and go for someone different, freshen up the team a little bit with the likes of Watkins. But I do think Antonio is still going to come good. I know I've been saying it week in, week out, but I just can't see him completely going dead like this. Nuclear Atoms hope doing well. Denver saying, do we hold transfers and just roll them? United and Brighton COVID outbreak. Yes, so if you haven't tuned into the start, as I mentioned, guys, United, Brighton game, of course, Brentford game, sorry. United, Brentford at risk of being postponed. I really do think that if you have your transfers right now, the best thing to do is completely hold until that Tuesday deadline at 6 p.m. UK time. That is the best move to make because we're getting information dropping each and every hour about the situation at clubs and with players. And holding those transfers is going to be essential going forward into them deadlines. Now, if it's a case of rolling your transfer going into coming game weeks, of course, if you're in a luxury position, and I'm sure not many managers tuning in are in a luxury position, of rolling your free transfer, then that is only going to strengthen your position in FPL because you know those 2 free transfers, when you're playing them, are likely going to be going up against other managers that are playing points hits, and that is going to be a valuable second free transfer for you to play. But I would urge managers right now in a situation where winter fixtures are so congested, probably taking a points hit, while it seems not a nice move to make, is probably worthwhile over the longer term. As I mentioned, if games are postponed because of COVID, so Man United assets miss the Tuesday and the weekend fixtures, a points hit, while it is going to be impacting you in the short term, will probably pay dividends over the longer term because you'll have an asset that features in both game weeks. So I do think that that is worth keeping in mind with points hits because basically if an asset misses 1 with COVID, he's going to miss 2 most likely due to the fixture congestion. So it's worth keeping that in mind. Nuclear Atom saying, do you think Gallagher will sometimes return to DM position because of Eze and others returning? This is a great point from Nuclear Atoms here about Gallagher. He's been in a brilliant asset so far this season. And I think a lot of managers have probably been a bit hesitant about Conor Gallagher over recent game weeks because we've seen him drop back into a bit more of a CDM position to play alongside either Coyote, I believe it's pronounced, or Will Hughes, and let the likes of Eze, Zaha, Edouard, even Olise on the right-hand side operate further in front of him and kind of dictate in that centre midfield position. Now, it's worth noting from the eye test, even when he was playing in a CDM role, he still was getting the license to go forward. But of course, we saw him back to that number 8 role in game week 16, and that proved to really pay dividends for him in that fixture. And I really do think that with the attacking potential that he does provide, I don't think we need to worry about Conor Gallagher reverting back to a CDM. Realistically, they have so many attacking assets in their side, but when an asset like that in midfield is the driving force in your side, and the best part of his game is scoring goals and arriving in the box, I see no reason why Patrice Evra is going to make Patrick Evra. Oh my God, I can't even pronounce. Sorry, I got Patrice and Vieira, and then I've got it all mixed up. Patrice Evra, Patrick Vieira as the manager. I see no reason why he is going to change that part of his game. And this is going to segue really nicely into Conor Gallagher as an asset. Now, I've got the player heat map for Conor Gallagher in game week 16, just in isolation, just to see how he did operate, because I'm conscious that based on the market forces, a lot of managers are probably moving towards him if they haven't owned him already. With the likes of Bowen, Blankin, they probably thought Gallagher's the guy to go to after that brilliant 15-point haul in game week 16. So first and foremost, we know that he played in that number 8 role, so his player heat map is going to be probably more advanced than necessarily when we discussed he plays as a CDM. And again, with the player heat map with 1 game week, it's very difficult to really get any concrete data based on that one performance. But you can see there, player touch map, getting touches within the box, still on set pieces with corners, you can see on that left-sided corner. And as you'd expect, being a box-to-box midfielder, the majority of his touches are around the halfway line, but I like the spread of the touch player map over this fixture. And you see that 7 shots, 3 attempted assists, 4 tackles, basically an all-round performance by him. And a brilliant performance, obviously, to get that 15-point haul. But I know you guys want to know the actual underlying stats for that performance. You can see that the 2 goals, 0.46 expected goals, which, yes, we know that second goal was an absolute worldie. But for those that did watch that game, the first goal was a brilliant finish in a position that I do see him picking up regularly. He scored plenty of those goals so far this season, arriving into the box, scoring from about 8 yards out. And I know that he's had plenty of chances that have been saved from similar positions. So from an eye test perspective, a 0.46 XG, I still think there is some serious value with him going forward into the coming game weeks because of his arrival in the box and his anticipation of where the ball's going. I'm seeing a great player there, and I really do think that this is the sort of guy that is going to not necessarily exceed his XG, but get plenty of chances in and around the box. And we saw there he does have in his locker to score those worldies, which is just another string to his bow. See that 7 shots, 3 of those on target. As I mentioned, 4 of those in the box, which is great to see. He's not necessarily a long shot merchant like necessarily Bruno Fernandes and players like that. He is arriving in the box, which is great to see. So Conor Gallagher, I would have no issues in regards to bringing him in. As we mentioned, he does sometimes operate a bit deeper, but over the course of a game, he is going to still be encouraged to be brought into the box, and I still think he's a brilliant asset going forward. So great question, Nuclear Atoms, in regards to Conor Gallagher, but I still think he's a great asset going forward. I think as well, with the great fixtures coming up for Crystal Palace and the guaranteed game time for someone like Conor Gallagher, that is just a real great recipe for points over the winter period. So that's worth keeping in mind. So we've got a question here from Seeker. Will Son play or not, from Seeker Reaper? So again, really difficult question to answer here because we don't know the current status with the Spurs game against Leicester. I think, again, guys, this is going to be a general rule of thumb. If you're currently sat there with any asset right now, and in particular the games that are currently being threatened to be postponed due to COVID, your best play is to wait until that Tuesday deadline. Have some sort of transfer plan in your mind, but have the intention of potentially selling that player if the news, like Spurs and Leicester, does get postponed. You have an out for your asset. Now, you've held for Son for game week 16, you haven't for game week 17, so you probably argue that he's only going to miss one more game potentially and then be ready available. But I would question missing one more game week probably is worthwhile selling to then free up the funds to improve the rest of your squad, because I am cautious that with the likes of the Man United fixture, I really do think that them funds are probably going to be needed to strengthen other parts of your squad. Nandri's saying, should I sell Zaha or Maddison? I really need to free up some funds. So this is a really good opportunity for me just to quickly compare both Zaha and Maddison as assets in the game, just to give you an idea on how both are operating, because I am conscious that Maddison in particular has been an asset that has been performing really well over recent game weeks, and I know a lot of managers right now have had their eyes on Maddison as an asset going forward. So I'm just going to quickly pick up Maddison's on here on the map. Give me 2 seconds so I can actually find him. I believe he's actually scored more points than I thought. Maddison, let me get him up a minute, guys. But Maddison is definitely an asset that I think we do need to have on our radar. But again, it's worth noting that with that potential postponement for Leicester, that is a big worry right now. So here we go. We currently have Zaha versus Maddison. Hope this helps you out. So you can see that Maddison has played slightly less minutes than Zaha, but has scored 69 points in comparison to Wilfried Zaha's 56 points. The 9 bonus points for Maddison in comparison to Zaha's 3 bonuses. We see that from the touch heat map that both players operating in very different positions, and no surprise to seeing Wilfried Zaha operating on that left-hand side touchline. It's only natural with Benteke and Edouard playing as a centre forward and interchanging between the two. Zaha has always been predominant on that left-hand side and coming into the box. And as you can see, they're getting plenty of touches in and around the left-hand side of the box. Maddison, on the other hand, first and foremost, you can see the dominant set piece taker on both corners, which is another great string to have on your bow as an FPL asset. But you can see that plenty of his touches are operating in that final third, middle of the pitch. Touches in the box are there, but you wouldn't necessarily say they are more than Wilfried Zaha. So you can see Maddison is getting much more of his shots and touches from outside the box. But it's worth noting, Maddison, having played less minutes, has already had 30 shots in comparison to Zaha's 26. And when we come down here into the underlying stats, this is where we can get a good idea on how both are operating. So you can see there, 4 goals apiece for both. Again, Maddison playing slightly less minutes, but Zaha having the better XG, 3.45 compared to Maddison's 2.76. But as I mentioned, shots and shots on target go in Maddison's favour, but shots in the box, 17 for Zaha and 13 for Maddison. So as I mentioned, with Maddison, we have seen him over the years. He is naturally a sort of player that likes to take pop shots from outside the box. Now, of course, he has scored plenty of goals from outside the box. There's no doubt in that. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a bad thing he is taking shots from outside the box, but 17 of those being outside of the box. I've seen better underlying stats from other assets having shots in the box, for example, like the likes of Conor Gallagher. So when we compare the likes of Maddison and Conor Gallagher, I would say they're slightly different assets because we're getting one that is really arriving in the box late compared to another asset that is more keen to take shots from outside the box. But again, he is brilliant at those, so there's no denying. But if you had to compare the two, Zaha or Maddison, I would probably consider selling Maddison of the two, mainly because of the fixtures coming up, which I'm going to bring up now. We see that Crystal Palace, over the next 5 game weeks, have some really, really favourable games. The likes of Southampton, Watford, I would say are really good attacking options in terms of fixtures. And we can see that Norwich as well, a brilliant fixture in game week 20. Instead, when we come down to Leicester, we can see first and foremost that Tottenham game. And again, it's worth noting that all games are at risk of COVID. But then Everton, which again is a bit of a leaky game for Everton, so it's a chance there for Maddison. But then Man City and Liverpool, I would argue that those are tricky 4 fixtures for Leicester and their assets. So if I had to pick between the two, I really do think that you probably look at selling Maddison, but I appreciate that over the recent form, it is going to be a difficult sell to make with the likes of Maddison after the form that he has been in. So guys, like I said, keep firing the question. Any updates with the COVID would be really appreciated. Nandri saying 77 points with no hits. That's quality. Soldier saying there are 42 confirmed cases of COVID in the Prem. So that is just an idea of the crazy situation we are in right now. Getting a few flashbacks of course, last season, which we don't want to see at all. Cheeky saying Livermento has just been ruled out with a gash on his leg. Okay, that's good to know. I'm not sure if he's necessarily been ruled out completely, but it's worth noting that he has got a flag, so it is worth noting that. Vivek saying I broke into my red arrow streak with 74. I went from 190k to 130k. Yeah, that is brilliant going there. Let me know, guys, if you've had any huge red arrows just to help me feel a little bit better. Watkins has seen training. Good to know from Nuclear Atoms. Just checking out here, guys. Plenty of stuff here. Plenty of comments. Appreciate it. 82 points Maddison. Only have Jota, Salah and Bowen as midfielders. Shall we, Nuclear say, still keep Alonso? Okay, so Alonso is an asset which has been super, super frustrating for managers. And it's worth noting as well, it's not necessarily been Alonso. Reece James has been the biggest troll over the last few game weeks. And I really do empathise for managers. 1 point over his last 3 game weeks. And I believe he had about over 50 points in the previous 3 or 4 game weeks. So I really do empathise for those managers that went for Reece James. But we see on the fixture analyzer here that from a defensive perspective, Chelsea have the 5th best fixtures with Everton, Wolves, Villa, Brighton and Liverpool. So from a defensive perspective, Chelsea have been leaky with goals. We saw that with the 2 conceded against Leeds. And of course we saw that in previous game weeks. That's why Chelsea have been really dangerous as double defensive assets, although previously they were providing great underlying stats. But I do still think that the likes of Alonso and Reece James are still worth holding going forward. Now, would I suggest maybe a double up in the Chelsea defence? Probably not. I think a double up in the Chelsea defence is probably not the direction that I would probably look at going. Now, I want to quickly come over to the Optastat sandbox here just to have a look at the player performances from a defensive perspective, just to see how they are operating over the course of the season, because I know this is something that managers do like to know going forward, and I hope you can see that on your screens there. So first, I'm just going to bring this up from game weeks 1 to game week 16, and we can see that Man City are absolutely dominating in the expected goals conceded, 8.89 over those 16 games, which is ridiculous. It's brilliant, and you can see only conceded 9 as well, so they're right on that kind of level playing field there. They're operating exactly how the underlying stats are suggesting. Liverpool, on the other hand, second best defence, 13.92, conceding 12. So again, Brilliant underlying stats for Liverpool, and the likes of Trent owners shouldn't be concerned. I think there's going to be a great balance of attacking returns and clean sheets. And Chelsea, on the other hand, third best defence, 16.37 expected goals conceded, and conceding 11. So you can see there that they have actually been the real overperformers over the course of the season so far. You can see that we predict the underlying stats suggest they should have conceded about 16 goals. They've kept 11. Whereas you compare that to the likes of Man City, they've conceded less goals, and the underlying stats suggest that that is actually sustainable. So right now, I think if you are a Chelsea defensive owner, I think moving towards either a one defensive owner, which I still think offers brilliant value, and maybe even going for the double up in Man City is probably the direction I would recommend managers go in. Now, if we look over the last 5 game weeks or so, we can see let's go from game week 11 to game week 16. Let's really look at the underlying stats here just to see how it shifted for Chelsea. We can see Man City has conceded 3 goals in their last 6. Expected goals conceded only 2.32 over those 6 game weeks, which is ridiculous to see. But you see that Chelsea currently dropping down the ranks here at 6.73 expected goals conceded in their last 6 game weeks. So I really think, and again, it's worth noting, these are teams like Leeds and West Ham that they have played, not necessarily out-and-out goal-scoring teams like Liverpool and Man City that they featured. So not the sort of stats I want to see as a double Chelsea defence owner. And looking at the consistency of Man City from game weeks 1 to 16 and from game weeks 10 to 16 or 11 to 16, I really think the double up in Man City is the way to go forward. But I appreciate with Alonso owners, I still think there is value in him, but I wouldn't be hesitant to necessarily shift away from him in the coming game weeks. Mohammed saying, transfer out Ronaldo just for this game week and get him back next game week if the bench is weak. Okay, so I know probably a lot of managers right now, myself included, let me know in the chat, guys, if you are in a similar boat. I know you don't want to rant about FPL, but I feel like we have had some bad luck this season. I'm one of those owners that brought in double Spurs, Emerson Royal and Kane. Yes, I deserved it because I brought in Emerson Royal. Ended up getting the COVID hit, which both of them went out. And then, of course, I brought in Dalot and Ronaldo from Man United. And now there's a potential that they're both going to be out for game week 17. So terrible, terrible luck. But what should you do with the likes of Ronaldo? Now, first and foremost, it has to be said, don't panic. Honestly, guys, don't panic in regards to the direction that you go in with your transfers. I still think we need to see what is actually happening in game week 17. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we can get that news before the deadline. So what to do with the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo? Well, we can see with the fixtures here for Man United. Fixture against Brentford, we had penciled in as a decent fixture for the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo. Then Brighton at home in the following game week, in game week 18, followed by Newcastle, Burnley, Wolves and Aston Villa. So really, really solid fixtures for the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo. My one worry with Cristiano Ronaldo, if I was to go away from him, is the funds that are invested in him that could improve the rest of your squad. Now, the reason I say this is because of the COVID situation going on right now. Of course, this could all become redundant if games get postponed and the Premier League goes to a halt. But what I think we've learned from this is that having a strong 15 is a much better strategy going forward than having big investments in heavy premiums. And I really think that is going to pay dividends over the course of this really difficult period in the winter. So I do think that if you were selling Ronaldo, although it would be very tempted to go back onto him, I really think that those funds that are available, you could go down into a guaranteed game time player, let's just say someone like Watkins at Aston Villa, and then go and spread that funds and improve areas in your team that you know are potential risks, not because of COVID, because we can't predict that, but for the likes of rotation or even potential injuries that are being flagged. So, for example, my team have situations where I have the likes of Brownhills, we have the likes of Livermentos with potential risks. I think going down from Ronaldo to a guaranteed game time and upgrading your full squad should be a strategy that everyone should consider going forward. And it's something I am considering as a Ronaldo owner right now, just because of the COVID situation. I think having a strong 15 is going to be better than having a strong 2 premiums, my personal opinion. Let me know in the chat, guys, what your thoughts are on that. Okay, we got one from Zamini saying, Foden for Mbeumo for a hit. Really interesting shout there, because of course, as I mentioned with Foden, it is worth noting that with Mbeumo, obviously got that 9-pointer. I was killed inside that he got that 9-pointer because I benched him. But with the situation with Foden, I still think that you are bringing an asset that is potentially going to be injured for this game week. We don't know where he's necessarily going to be fit enough to start. And I think that's enough of a reason not to make that move for a points hit. We know with Mbeumo, if the game is on, he is likely going to be a starter in the Brentford side. I know you want to invest in a Man City midfielder, but I just don't think for a hit it is worthwhile. I think there is going to be bigger issues in your team that is going to be more of a priority than Phil Foden. Vivek saying, Mbeumo to Gallagher, 4 yellow cards, and have Cancelo next week and Foden, and have Livramento stay at bench next game week. Okay, that's quite a lot to unpack there. Mbeumo to Gallagher, I like that move as a sideways if it's for a free transfer. Of course, Gallagher coming back off at the following game week and Livramento staying on the bench. I like that move going forward. So yes, I would make that move if you had a free transfer available to do that. Dan Bennett in the chat, hope you're doing well, buddy. He's just saying, I see a few people considering selling Alonso. I've considered it too, but only to fund Ronaldo. If the United game is off, then I'll keep Alonso. I don't mind selling Alonso if you're funding another move like a City midfielder. And I completely resonate what Dan is saying there. I completely agree. I think right now it's probably a risky move to bring in a United asset like Ronaldo. If we go into this game week with the information we have for that United game, hopefully things become clear. But I do think a City midfielder should be the priority going forward for assets. We know with their fixtures coming up that they have brilliant fixtures. We can see here Man City, Leeds, Newcastle, Leicester. Those 3 alone are conceding goals, serious goals. I really think just having ownership in that Man City midfielder is going to be an essential part over the Christmas period. I know a lot of people right now are discussing about Foden, Gundogan, Bernardo Silva. I think from Pep Guardiola's press conference that Ferran Torres is the only player out going into game week 17. So we know that there is going to be serious rotation over these next 3 game weeks because of the amount of players that he has available to him. We're forgetting Kevin De Bruyne currently sat on the bench, one of the best players in the world. He is going to take game time from assets. And there's no way that Kevin De Bruyne from now into the end of the season is going to be an asset that sits on the bench and comes in from game to game. He is going to be an integral part of this Man City team once he gets fully fit. And there is going to be a scapegoat in that midfield. Now, right now, based on the kind of display of performers, Bernardo Silva just looks like an essential player in this Man City team. And although the underlying stats really do suggest to go towards the likes of Phil Foden, I just think Bernardo Silva is just offering you guaranteed game time and still offering decent underlying stats. Not as good as Foden's, but decent underlying stats. And I think that is the main priority over this winter period, is having minutes, and expected minutes is going to be really key. So I really think that Phil Foden, while he's the better asset from an underlying stats perspective, Silva is probably the man that I would be targeting over that period, just because of the minutes. The minutes are essential over that period. Plenty of chat. Like I said, guys, if you haven't already, make sure you upload your squad to Fantasy Football Fix. It's completely free and you get access to the free tools. And importantly, if you want to get yourself a free trial from now until the end of the year, then really do sign up to our free trial, get access to the premium tools so you can get all of these that I've been showing you and more. Really great partners. It's going to help you improve your game, and it's a great opportunity to do so. So many game weeks coming up from now until the end of the year. Okay, we've got Colin saying Gallagher or Bowen. Okay, so that's a really good comparison that I think probably a lot of people right now are looking at. So I've brought up the fix comparison matrix, and I've gone one better, Colin. I've got one better here. I've got Gallagher, Mason Mount, Bowen, Maddison, and Bernardo Silva for us all to compare over the season so far. So we can actually get a direct comparison. Now, great part about this, we can also look at the projected points over the coming game week. So you can see there, Gallagher is projected to score 18.5 points over the next 5 game weeks. Mason Mount, on the other hand, slightly more on 18.8. Bowen on 20.5. Maddison on 17.1. And Bernardo Silva on 20.9. No surprises that Bernardo Silva is leading the way in regards to underlying projected points, just mainly because of that Man City team being so good in the defensive third. Now, of course, Mason Mount and Bernardo Silva, slightly different price bracket, 7.6 to 7.7. So when we do look at this, just take that with a little bit of pinch of salt, because realistically, Gallagher is 6.1 million, has been the value pick of the season so far. And I would argue that he has been a better pick than Bernardo Silva based on his actual price per points per price, however you look at it. So we see here minutes played has been slightly different. So let me know in the chat, guys, if this is a better way of looking at it. But I'm going to do it showing the average per game, because the likes of Mason Mount have played basically half the minutes of the likes of Conor Gallagher. It's going to be difficult for us to get a direct comparison and see the averages. So let's look at averages per game. And again, it's worth noting, for the likes of Gallagher, who have played much more minutes, we can actually get a bit more of a bigger understanding on how he's been performing across the course of the season. The likes of Mason Mount, I would argue, because it's a smaller sample size, we can come to better conclusions with Gallagher because of a bigger sample size, and he's been operating at this level over a longer period, so it's worth noting that. So you can see the FPL points, Bernardo Silva 6 per game, which is only, it's better, but not much better than the likes of Mason Mount and Conor Gallagher, and that's the big one. We're going to be comparing Conor Gallagher here mainly because at 6.1 million, he is operating seriously well in comparison to Bernardo Silva. Goals, 0.5 goals per game for both Mason Mount and Bernardo Silva, but Gallagher on 0.4, again, over a longer sustained period, is really, really impressive at 6.1 million. And again, FPL assists, we know that Bowen was leading the way basically at 0.4 per game alongside Mason Mount now, but Bowen, with those set pieces, was really getting the majority of his FPL assists. Conor Gallagher on 0.3, and we know from the comparison we've done earlier, is on set pieces as well. So it's not necessarily something that Bowen can put his hands up and say he has as an asset over Gallagher. Gallagher still has that string to his bow. Shots per game, Bowen just leading the way on 2.4, but 2.3 again for Gallagher, going toe-to-toe with basically all of these assets in each department. And something that we have been discussing in videos of recent is the low shot volume of Bernardo Silva. Now we can see there 1.4 shots per game averaging, which is significantly less than the likes of Bowen and Gallagher. And I know on recent videos when we compared, we looked at the shot volume for the likes of Gundogan and Phil Foden, and they definitely did dominate him in that area. And I think a lot of managers are arguing that at the rate that he is scoring right now, 0.5 goals per game, and the low shot volume that he's been operating at, it isn't a sustainable sort of way that he is going. So I would expect his goal tally to flatten and come to the mean as we continue throughout the course of the season. And last up, we're just looking at big chances created. I don't know necessarily whether people are a huge fan of this metric, but Mason Mount leading the way on 0.5 per game. Been really, really good in Chelsea's recent fixtures and been an important asset, picking up important goals against obviously West Ham and Leeds. But again, Gallagher, none of these departments is he last or operating behind number one very far. Honestly, Gallagher is really impressed me in these underlying stats and is really coming as an overall well-rounded asset. So if you're asking me about Gallagher or Bowen, although Bowen slightly hasn't pipped in terms of projected points, I honestly think Gallagher is proven to be a phenomenal asset so far this season. Now, apologies, that was quite a long-winded answer to your question, but hopefully that has helped a lot of you compare different midfield assets against one another, and hopefully that has shown that Gallagher is really proven to be an exceptional asset so far this season. Okay, so Chuck Jr. is saying, is it good game week to triple captain Mo Salah? Okay. Is it a good game week to triple captain Mo Salah? So let's go over to the fixtures first and foremost, just to see what we are playing with for Liverpool. And we know that they have got that home fixture against Newcastle. Now, whoever watched that game with Leicester and Newcastle know that Newcastle are struggling right now defensively. And of course, they did keep a clean sheet in game week 16 for Eddie Howe. Sorry, game week 15. But when we saw Leicester tear Newcastle apart, it does seem like an appealing option to triple captain somebody like Mo Salah in this fixture. Now, the reason that I would probably say no to triple captain Mo Salah in this fixture, first and foremost, it's worth mentioning that the triple captain chip sometimes gets over-exaggerated in the game. I really don't think it's necessarily as a powerful tool as a lot of managers suggest. With the triple captain, when an asset like Mo Salah becomes the dominant captain throughout each and every game week, every manager is getting double the points. So of course, simple maths here, if Mo Salah scores 10, every captainer is getting 20. If you triple captain, you get 30. You get 10 additional points, which of course is brilliant. But really to get an effective triple captain, in an FPL season is to go slightly against the grain. Now, I'm not saying this is the right way of doing it, but I'm just saying that triple captain, to get significant gains on oppositions, is to triple captain somebody slightly against the run of play who is going to really exceed, obviously, the go-to captain. Now, I'm not saying to do this, but I'm just saying with everybody captaining Salah, it just really makes the chip less and less powerful because you're only really gaining a third more than everyone else when you can really go big on other assets. Now, I hope that makes sense, but the other caveat on why you shouldn't triple captain Mo Salah this game week is because we already have guaranteed double game weeks. Now, we know Spurs is going to get a double game week, obviously on that postponement. We know Brighton are going to be involved. There's rumours that Man United's game is going to get cancelled. So already we have 2 or 3 big teams that are guaranteed double game weeks. And that means a higher ceiling for FPL assets. It means that there's a potential of 180 minutes, which means that, of course, that FPL ceiling is risen higher. And although Mo Salah might not necessarily get a double game week, I really do think that having an asset that plays over 2 games in one game week is a better use of your triple captain chip. But again, if you have that real gut feeling, I can't go against people's gut, then go for it. But I think a double game week, because we know we're going to get double game weeks now, is the right move with your triple captain. So a man's saying, sorry, I've just lost that one because quite a few have just skipped by, so apologies. JJ saying, would you prioritise getting in Watkins or Antonio? Okay, so would I personally prioritise getting one or the other? I appreciate that Antonio recently has been a very, very difficult asset to hold over coming game weeks. Now, we have mentioned about the projected points going forward. We can see that Antonio is projected to score 32.5 points over this period. Now, in regards to Watkins, he is projected to score 20.8 points. And we can see here with their upcoming fixtures, they have Norwich, Burnley, Chelsea, Leeds, Brentford, and Man United. Now, I think the big question for Ollie Watkins, he's been a very decent asset so far this season. We can see on the game data here, 9-pointer and an 8-pointer in game week 12. But I wouldn't necessarily say that he has been an explosive asset and one that we necessarily have to own. You can see on the shot volume, 0 versus Liverpool, 2s, 1, 0, 2, 2. We're not seeing an absolute explosion of shot volume and chances for him. But of course, we are considering that against tricky opponents like Man City's and the Liverpool. So I wouldn't read too much into that for him as an asset, in particular because Steven Gerrard has only been manager for a number of these game weeks. And we have seen Aston Villa change as a team and as an outfit, which is promising to see. Now, for Ollie Watkins going forward, I think the big caveat right now is how are they going to operate once Danny Ings returns? We know that he is close, if not fit, for game week 17. So I question how that is going to change his position in the team. Is he going to go operate off the left? Are they going to play a 2 up top? We don't really know right now. So I think that's the one question mark I would have over Ollie Watkins. Does Danny Ings in the team improve him or worsen him under Steven Gerrard? Antonio, on the other hand, yes, he has been a super disappointing asset over probably arguably the last 10 game weeks, I would say. But we can see here that he is projected to score significantly more points than Watkins. And again, I can't really argue Antonio in regards to the underlying stats. His shot volume has basically been the same as Watkins. We're not necessarily seeing anything here to suggest that he is going to be the explosive asset that he has been in game weeks 1 to 5. But we see here with the upcoming fixtures with Arsenal, Norwich at home and Southampton at home in particular. I think those 2 home fixtures in particular, and that Watford game, I would argue, are phenomenal fixtures for Antonio. And while we are looking back at previous data, and yes, there isn't anything to suggest he is going to necessarily go off, I do think that he is going to have brilliant fixtures. And that's why I would slightly go towards Mikel Antonio, because he is the only centre forward at the club. Yes, he probably will get rotated in one of the next 3, but with Watkins and Antonio and Ings, we don't know whether Ings and Watkins are going to slightly rotate in the side either. So I would slightly go for Antonio, but I appreciate if you've been burnt, you might not want to go for him. James said, what do you think of Vardy to Watkins? Already have Antonio and Dennis up top. Yes, I don't mind that move at all. We've just looked at the data for Antonio, and I think that that is not a bad move at all going for Watkins. I appreciate that there probably hasn't been the interest for premium forwards right now. And with Man United, obviously with the fixtures coming up and the potential COVID situation, that is what is skewing those fixtures coming up. Otherwise, I would say maybe a Ronaldo move, but can't justify that right now with the uncertainty of COVID in those teams. As always, guys, if you are tuned in, I can see plenty of people are tuned in. Please do hit that like button, support the channel, and of course hit that subscribe button. Hopefully we're going to have plenty of content, fingers crossed, COVID dependent. Hopefully we can actually have some football to talk about over the coming game weeks. Cheeks is saying you could move Dennis and Watkins. Seller saying cash in front of Reguilon. Interesting point about Reguilon, probably someone we haven't spoken about because of Spurs missing, obviously, game week 16. I think Reguilon could become an asset to own in the coming game weeks after their COVID situation has settled. But right now, cash in front of Reguilon. We saw the Aston Villa fixtures coming up. There is potential there, and he is playing as an offensive asset for this Aston Villa team. I don't mind cash right now with the fixtures coming up, in particular that Norwich game. And we don't know about the uncertainty of Spurs' fixture against Leicester. Mohammed is saying, is Aït-Nouri a good replacement for Livramento? With Wolves' defence looking very solid, considering his price point, meaning we can rotate him for harder fixtures. That's a really interesting point. I haven't really considered Aït-Nouri as an option going forward. So let's just quickly bring up the player heat map section and we can quickly look at him as an FPL asset. Just a quick deep dive to see how he has been operating, if he's been creating anything for the team, or whether he's somebody that we can just kind of look over at a 4.3 million asset. So let's bring up basically the comparison that you mentioned, Aït-Nouri versus Livramento. Now, of course, Livramento has played significantly more minutes than Aït-Nouri, basically double the amount. But Aït-Nouri is slowly catching up, 41 points compared to Tino Livramento's 53. And we know that the majority of those points of Livramento did come at the start of the season. Now, when we look at the touch heat map for both players, they are basically identical, just on the opposite flank to one another. But importantly, what we can see there is Aït-Nouri having set pieces within that Wolves team. Livramento, on the other hand, doesn't have that side to his game, with Ward-Prowse dominating them at Saints. So I do think Aït-Nouri, having that part of his game, is a really interesting option to have. Then when we come down into the underlying stats, we can see both are offensive assets. 6 shots for Aït-Nouri in under half the minutes, 8 for Livramento, an attempted assist, 8 for Aït-Nouri, 13 for Livramento. What I want to do here is just come down to the average statistics per 90, because obviously, with Aït-Nouri playing half the minutes of Livramento, this just gives us a bit more of a better perception on how they are operating over an average game time for one another. We can see there, because Livramento has actually scored 0.06 goals per 90. But what I want to look at is the expectancy. 0.02 for Aït-Nouri, 0.05 per 90 for Livramento. So both assets from an offensive perspective in a goal scoring manner aren't necessarily getting in positions where they are going to be scoring goals. But you can see there, Aït-Nouri 0.75 shots per 90, Livramento 0.5. So Aït-Nouri winning that department. And you can see the same with the trend continuing. Shots on target, shots in the box, expected assists, goal assists. Although they are very close between one another, Aït-Nouri has shown he's a very promising asset over the coming game weeks. And I really do think it's an interesting topic to discuss, with Livramento currently priced at 4.5 million. And we've seen the fixtures coming up for Southampton, Crystal Palace, Brentford, West Ham, Tottenham, Newcastle, Wolves. I wouldn't necessarily say that they are difficult fixtures, but teams that definitely could score against them when we look at a defensive asset. Wolves, on the other hand, we said about having good fixtures, but with Brighton, Chelsea, Watford, Arsenal, Man United and Southampton, I don't necessarily foresee clean sheets sustainable over this period. So I do like Aït-Nouri as an attacking asset, and at 4.3 million, he's a nice sideways move. But I think if you bought Livramento at 4 million at the start of the season, I probably would just hold off on him. He's guaranteed game time, and we don't know whether Aït-Nouri could get rotated from time to time in this Wolves team, because I don't think he's necessarily established himself as guaranteed starter. So I would probably hold on Livramento, but I appreciate Wolves recently have been good defensively and somebody we could consider in the coming game weeks. I think that's definitely something that a lot of people in the chat are probably appreciating that shout. Just checking over what we have here. Manandia saying, James to Diaz, is that a good move? Now, we touched on Man City double up and we looked at the underlying stats. If you haven't seen it already, make sure you slightly rewind it, maybe about 20 minutes. We looked at the defensive underlying stats for Man City versus Chelsea. And the conclusion was Man City are significantly the better defence over the course of the season in both the shorter term and the course of the season. So a case of Diaz and James. From a defensive perspective, Man City are the go-to team. Now we look at it from an FPL perspective. Diaz offers clean sheets. Reece James offers attacking potential. Now, I know Diaz did score a few game weeks back, but there's a big difference between looking at team clean sheet potential and FPL potential. And I think with Reece James, he just offers a bit more of a complete package. Now, it's worth noting, Chelsea defence aren't necessarily anything bad. They're still ranking in the top 5 for expected goals conceded, even over their tough period. But Reece James offers clean sheet potential. I know it doesn't seem it, but importantly, attacking potential. Whereas Diaz, at his price point, although I like him as a double up with Cancelo in the Man City defence, I probably just wouldn't want to move sideways from Reece James to him because we're missing out on that potential attacking returns for Reece James. But I would suggest a Man City double up in defence is a solid move, no doubt. WR saying, what should I do with David De Gea? I don't have a backup goalkeeper. Okay, so again, worth noting right now, at the time of recording, there has been no necessary postponement for Man United. However, with the situation at Spurs, we know that they cancelled their Europa League and they cancelled their Game Week 16 fixture. I think the assumption right now is that if Man United's fixture against Brentford is cancelled on Tuesday, the weekend fixture is heavily in doubt that it will continue. So what should you do with the likes of the Man United assets? I think with Ronaldo, I think he's a cash cow that you probably should use to invest in the rest of your squad. David De Gea, I really do empathise for those managers that did go for him. I think right now, doing a sideways move for a goalkeeper, which has a guaranteed fixture in Game Week 17, is probably the right move to make. But it's worth mentioning that right now we are just in crazy uncertain times in FPL. I would probably recommend going De Gea to Ramsdale. I think Ramsdale's ownership right now, he's kind of the perfect FPL goalkeeper. He gets save points, he gets bonus points, and he keeps clean sheets now and then for Arsenal. It's worth mentioning. But it's not saying that Arsenal couldn't have a COVID outbreak the week after. I think we just have to accept that our decisions we're making in FPL right now are very, very hard to predict. And you need to just kind of be acceptant that anything can happen right now in FPL. It's a very different season to, years and years gone by. So I would probably recommend, if the Man United game gets postponed, a De Gea to Ramsdale move would be my suggestion. But again, there's no guarantee that his game could get postponed. So it's just worth noting that. Okay, at least saying Sterling in as a Man City asset. Now, of course, being the pricier Man City midfielder in the game, I appreciate that managers haven't really had an eye on Sterling as an option because, rightly so, him at his price point right now hasn't been delivering over the course of the season, while probably you'd argue over recent game weeks he's been ticking along quite nicely. Now, let's compare him to the highest scoring midfielder in Bernardo Silva. Now, it's worth mentioning first and foremost, Sterling has been a little bit better for Man City. He's been getting game time. We can see 90 minutes, 86, 90, 90, 90 for Man City. And when he has been playing, 8 points, 3 points, 5, 7, 11, which is great to see. And decent shot volume, but importantly, shots on target are looking solid for him and attempted assists. So he's looking like a really nice asset for Man City. But the big caveat is that 10.6 million price bracket for him. I think this is the big issue for Sterling. Now, let's have a look at game weeks, basically 12 to 16, because we know when we look at the touch heat map for Bernardo Silva, we are seeing a player that has played significantly more minutes than Raheem Sterling. Now, it's worth mentioning that Raheem Sterling has had 53 points in 829 minutes, so decent returns for him as an asset. But we can see here in the average statistics per 90, and this shouldn't come as a surprise because Bernardo Silva, we know, from an underlying stats perspective, does not compare to the likes of Fodens and the Sterlings. And we can see that average stats per 90, Sterling does dominate him in pretty much every department. Goals slightly in Bernardo's favour, but expected goals, shots on target, shots in the box, everything Sterling pretty much dominates Bernardo Silva in. And it shouldn't be a surprise because Sterling operating in that front three rather than Bernardo Silva in that second three. So that shouldn't come as a surprise. And of course, Sterling being on penalties. But with those lack of minutes, we can see he's already beaten Bernardo Silva for expected goals. Again, penalties are a part of his game, so it's worth noting that. But when we look at his recent game weeks from game weeks, I believe I said 12 to 16, and we'll look at Bernardo Silva from 12 to 16, we see that Bernardo Silva is still offering amazing value at that considerable cheaper price. 41 points over this period compared to Sterling's 34. And we can see from the touch heat map here, really promising for both assets. Sterling getting plenty of touches in the box, probably more rounded. Bernardo Silva coming off that right-hand side. But again, when we look at the underlying stats for both assets, we can see 4 goals for Bernardo Silva, 3 for Sterling. But the expected goals and the shots and the expected assists all fall into Sterling's favour. So realistically, looking at this, comparing the two, I do think that Sterling is the better option. But that is if money is no object. Right now, Bernardo Silva at his price point, about 3 million cheaper than Sterling. There's just no way we can justify freeing up that additional cash to invest in someone like Raheem Sterling. Now, if you're in a position where you have super cheap forwards and you have cash sitting around, I really like Raheem Sterling as an option, but rotation's going to be a risk with him. And of course, at that price point, he really does need to deliver, because at 3 million less, you can get an asset like Bernardo Silva who's ticking along really nicely in the game. Okay, guys, let us have a look at some other questions here. We've got Lacuntas, Ramsdale versus West Ham or Sanchez versus Wolves. I think right now, the ownership of Ramsdale and the way that they have been operating, I really do think that benching Ramsdale is a very difficult move to make. Now, it's worth mentioning first and foremost that Wolves are the second lowest goal scorers in the league. And Raul Jimenez now not being available for Wolves for game week 16 basically means that for game week 17, Brighton have a brilliant opportunity for a clean sheet. Now, it's worth mentioning there is a COVID outbreak potentially at Brighton. So that does question whether Sanchez is going to be available for that game. But I really do think right now with Ramsdale, the ownership that he has right now and the form that he's in particular save points and bonus points, I just think going for Ramsdale is the wise move. I just think that rank could kill you if you don't start him. Okay, we've got some more questions here. Tim saying, come on guys, give Nacho a like. Appreciate that, Tim. Thank you, buddy. Victor saying, should I do Son to Jota, then the rest of the funds I can transfer some Man City options in a few weeks? Yes, so I don't mind this right now, guys. I really do think right now with the COVID situation that we have, it's very, very difficult for us to basically go for premium assets and go for a really weak bench. We know that the benches are going to be significantly important for us. So if you're sat there right now with a premium asset that is missing a game week, I would really, really suggest managers just considering potentially using those funds to upgrade other areas in your squad. I really do think that is a wise move because the COVID situation is so unpredictable right now. I just think that is going to be a wise move for you going forward. So yes, while Son could easily be a big scorer in the coming game weeks, I just don't think we can justify it right now. So yeah, I think that is probably a wise move, spreading the funds and go for a Man City asset with the rest of the squad. Amir saying, I closed my eyes to transfer in a midfielder, got a Langer, win or loss. I think that's a loss. Unfortunately. Titan Gaming, don't get Livramento, he's got a gash. Yeah, important to say that. I wouldn't bring in Livramento. If you're an owner, I think it's okay to hold right now, but I think we need to get more information for sure. As I say, guys, apologies if I missed your question. I've kind of been skipped forward to the front of it. So if I missed your question, drop it in. We're going to be going for another 5 or 10 minutes. Then I'm going to have to wrap it up. So as I said, guys, 3 more likes for 50. Tom's just put it in there. Please do like the live stream if you haven't already. I really appreciate you guys jumping on. Of course, there's so much uncertainty right now in FPL. And of course, with all these tools available, if you want me to throw up a comparison, if there's a particular player you want us to delve into, drop it in the comments. We will look at it for sure. But as always, please do give the stream a like. I do really appreciate it. Hopefully it's providing some value. 1 more till 50, guys. 1 more till 50. Eamon saying, is it a good idea to buy Backman as a backup goalkeeper if De Gea's game gets postponed? Okay, so that's a really valid point. I appreciate it, guys. We've gone over the 50. Really do appreciate that. So backup goalkeepers. I am not a big fan of backup goalkeepers if we are going through a normal FPL season. If we're going through a normal season, I think it's a waste of money. You get a headache deciding each and every game week which goalkeeper to go for. Now, in the situation that we're in right now with the COVID situation, I do think that having a backup goalkeeper is probably a wise move. Now, of course, we can get situations where both your goalkeepers are suspended and or out with COVID, and that is just how it falls sometimes. But giving yourself a backup goalkeeper enhances your chances of having a playing goalkeeper that game week. So I do like the move for Backman. I think Foster is still out for a considerable amount of time. Let me know in the chat if you guys know, but over the coming game weeks, I do think that he is still out. And realistically, with the likes of Backman, with those assets at that price point, fixtures aren't really necessarily something we look at, because with Watford's defence, we're not really considering them keeping clean sheets. So I do like that move. The one thing I would say is people probably have plenty of transfers they need to make right now in their teams. Is a goalkeeper a priority? I don't necessarily think it is, but I do like that move. If you have free transfers available, it is just going to strengthen your squad a little bit more. But of course, you are vested in a goalkeeper which might not play week in, week out. So I appreciate that. Lion Gaming saying, is Masuaku a good buy? Okay, so Masuaku as an option. We know West Ham have decent fixtures coming up. From a defensive perspective, they have the second best fixtures. And from an attacking perspective, they have the best fixtures going forward over the next 6. So from a clean sheet perspective, yes, West Ham are good for clean sheets from a fixture perspective. From an underlying stats perspective, they still aren't necessarily cutting it. And I don't think Masuaku right now is worth a transfer in. We don't know the extent, unless somebody does know and can update me, about Ben Johnson, how long-term that injury is. I think there's a chance that rotation could come in. And we have to remember Cresswell as well. He could easily share game time with Masuaku, if not take away game time. So although I like Masuaku as a crazy FPL pick, I think right now it's just not worth bringing in a rotational risk potentially. Lee Harris saying, considering dropping Ronaldo down to Dennis and upgrading Brownhill to a City mid, thoughts? Obviously only if the United game is off. Yes, this is a perfect example of something I would definitely consider as a Ronaldo owner. Ronaldo right now is obviously a brilliant asset because of the fixtures coming up, but at that premium price right now, and potentially Man United's fixtures getting postponed maybe for the next 2, having that asset stuck in your team just isn't a good use of your money. Instead, bringing down to a guaranteed game time like Dennis, again, any fixture can get postponed due to COVID, and then upgrading someone like Brownhill, who is probably guaranteed game time on that Burnley team, but investing that into somebody who is guaranteed game time and attacking potential like Bernardo Silva, that in the long term is probably going to offer you more points over this COVID hit period. So yes, I do like that move in particular. Akib saying, Foden worth taking a hit for? Again, I don't think I'll necessarily take a hit right now because the injury status on Foden isn't clear. If we were to get information that he is fit and ready to go, then I would consider that. But again, it's who you're selling Foden for. If you're selling a guaranteed game time player, then I would question it because them transfers are so precious right now during this COVID period. I really prioritise upgrading players that aren't playing in your side just to give yourself a more rounded squad. Amir saying Huang Ho incoming. Yeah, that's going to be very interesting to see. Obviously, he is going to be a guaranteed starter, you'd assume, with Jimenez being out. Kathdan saying worth -4 from Rafinha to Foden. Again, I think I covered that. You're probably selling a guaranteed game time in Rafinha for somebody who isn't guaranteed game time with Foden. I like it if we do get information that Foden is available. Graham saying, is TA still a great shout? And I completely back up Tom's thing there that he's essential. Again, nobody's essential in FPL, but I do think that he is somebody that is hard to not own because of the attacking output, and importantly, such a bonus magnet. He does pick up so many bonus points. Rajiji's STV saying Rice and Bellingham to Manchester United, Lingard and Martial to West Ham. That'd be a serious upgrade for Man United. That'd be a serious deal if they can get that in. Just check if there's any more questions, guys. So I appreciate we probably are going to wrap it up here. I think Abdel saying, what about Gundogan versus Smith Rowe versus Bowen versus Mount versus Gallagher? So I think with the Gundogan situation, because he's just coming off a slight injury, I don't think we can consider him right now as an asset to buy. Smith Rowe, of course, still a slight injury risk. Bowen, I would say the argument is Bowen versus Mount versus Gallagher realistically. And again, we had the fixed comparison matrix up for those assets. You can see here Gallagher versus Mount versus Bowen. I could chuck in Madison here just for a Smith Rowe comparison so we can see it. And we can see there that Smith Rowe projected to score 20.2 points if he is fit. It's worth mentioning he did miss game week 16, but it's 6 million offering serious value. And when we look at the average per game, he is still doing really well, slightly below Gallagher in a lot of these areas, and that's why I probably would argue Gallagher is still a better pick than Smith Rowe. But the projected points do have Smith Rowe slightly leading in that area, so it's worth mentioning that Smith Rowe is still a brilliant asset at 6 million, but I want to see him guaranteed game time for sure. So guys, I think we're going to wrap it up there. We've been going for about an hour, 5 minutes, and I think we have covered pretty much all the hot topics. Again, this has been about an hour stream, so if there has been anything that you have missed, make sure to rewind the live stream. We've covered some important hot topics like the Watford forwards, midfield, mid-priced. We've discussed about the COVID situation. And as always, we're available on Twitter for any last-minute questions. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. Of course, it's been a tricky time right now for FPL with the COVID situation. All I would say to you guys is just prepare for the unexpected. You are going to be making transfers and bringing in players that are naturally going to get suspended or miss a game due to COVID. It's important just to be very level-headed and understand that some of the moves you're making, while they might be the right moves, might not pan out as the right decision just because of the uncertainty in FPL. So don't get yourself down. That's the important thing. And thank you again for tuning in, guys. We really do appreciate the support for the channel. This live stream format, I think you guys are enjoying. Obviously, if you do like it, make sure you like the video. We're really enjoying bringing it to you. It gives us a good opportunity to show off the website. Good opportunity for you guys to explore the premium tools. And again, if you do want to get involved with Fantasy Football Fix, then you can upload your squad for free to access the free tools. And from now until the end of the year of 2021, you can sign up to the free trial and get access to all the premium tools as well that I have showed you guys, which is great. Again, you can compare all the assets that you want to until the early hours of the morning. So be sure to check that out, guys. All the links are in the bio and in the live chat that Tom has been dropping in. So last thing I say, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I really do hope that you have a great game week 17. Hopefully, we can get some confirmed news going into the deadline and we can have a bit more clarity on a decision. So take care, guys. Hope your arrows are green and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. Cheers.